Hello, Jamie.
Okay, there we go. Oh, Jamie, I'm so glad you're here. Yay! Jamie is awesome. I should connect you two also. He's pretty great. And I'm sorry. Jamie, I can't remember. Are you using he or is it they them? I'm gonna go with they for now. They are amazing, and they are also right now trying to get their ASD, and they're already diagnosed ADHD. So it's kind of the same sort of the path as you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm excited that Jamie made it. So that first comment from Sandra Mann doesn't mean she's here because she was confused about my invite. Okay, so we're just gonna go ahead and get started.
Oh, congrats, Jamie. That's so awesome.
Oh, yay! Yay! That is my favorite. That is my favorite.
Oh, I bet that's just so affirming.
I've been waiting for that. I have been waiting for that. Oh, I'm so excited for
I'm right behind you there. I'm getting on it. I'm working on mine.
Yours is coming soon, and you've already got what I call the Grace diagnosis. So that's all that matters.
I've had that for years, so I'm comfortable with that.
Before you even noticed that it was happening.
I don't know why my job or my doctors don't just accept that. Like,
right? I should start making diagnostic paperwork with professional. Just kidding. Just
you gotta,
kidding.
you gotta get in on this.
I want to be clear for the audience. I cannot legally
diagnose. Yes, no. But you know what? Sometimes you got to create your own system. So.
Yes, Jamie, I did know, and I Grace diagnosed you too before you told me.
Yes, Grace knew well before I even thought that it could.
Oh no, I'm talking about Jamie now. I'm talking about Jamie now.
I'm saying like Grace knew about me before it was even like years before it was even thought of seriously in my head.
Yep. And before I told you too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're gonna get started with introductions. We don't have a lot of people on yet, but it is Sunday. Who knows? Maybe people will come on in a little bit. Yes, Kat. So Kat says, I really think we need to work on getting autistic folks in the diagnostic process. I agree.
Yes.
However, if all you want is just to know and to be accepted in our community, we accept self-identifying. Absolutely. So you don't need to worry about that. But for those who need accommodations or supports, or who even just want it, yes, we need to work on getting more access to diagnosis. And that
I if I may interrupt, I think what Kat might mean is actually getting more autistic people like inside of the process, like creating the process and running the process and stuff. So like I'm personally thinking like those questionnaires are not written for me. They are not written by somebody like me for somebody like me. And I would love if those would get looked at.
They're not written for any of us.
No,
it is not made for an autistic to fill it out.
Like I think I would feel so much more comfortable talking to a doctor who was autistic and doing the assessment versus somebody who was neurotypical looking for the bullet point list of things. Like
Yep. And honestly, I feel like filling out the forms for an autistic assessment is a lot like going to the doctor and trying to pick your pain scale.
Yes.
I can't do that.
I'm like, this is the worst pain that I've ever felt, so it's a 10, right?
I once told my doctor that my migraines were feeling like labor.
And it's
my male doctor said, in what way?
Yeah. I remember I have a past with kidney stones, and I went in to the ER, and like with a kidney stone, like as soon as you start feeling the sensation, I mean, you don't have much time before you're screaming. And I went into the ER in this intake room and they were like, and what's your pain scale? And I'm screaming and slamming my hand on the table because I'm currently going through incredible. And they're just so calm. So how are you feeling? And I'm like I'm dying. And they're like, oh. And I'm like, wait a minute, is your reaction like this because you don't believe me? And now I'm not only feeling this crazy amount of pain, but now I'm feeling guilty. And now I feel like I'm not being believed. And like, which just adds on to
So
everything.
it's so invalidating. It's so invalidating.
Don't ask me the question if you don't like my answer.
Right? Right? Oh goodness. Oh goodness.
Mm.
All right, so we're getting a little more people in here. So I'm going to start introductions. Okay, so I am Grace Ogden-Parker, late diagnosed autistic. I go by she, her, and I use identity first language. So I am autistic. And I'm going to go ahead and describe myself. I am a white female, brown hair, blue glasses, blue headphones, blue shirt. There's a little bit of white on my sleeve. And I'm using a fake background of space because I love it. And it's blue also. So that's why I love it, besides the fact that it's space. And I'm going to introduce Kinzi here. She is one of my good friends. And I'm going to let her say a little bit about herself as well.
Hello, all. My name is Kinzi McIntosh. My pronouns are she, her. I do, well, since I'm now coming into an identity, I'm trying to do identity first. So even though it's not official, I do think that I am autistic. So I am an autistic woman. And so I guess I also have like ADHD and a few things here and there. But autism is the one that I am going with for my identity because that's first and foremost what makes me see the world the way I do. So and then physical, I have long dark auburn hair, short blunt bangs that hang out right above some big glasses that I love. Got me a nice little gold nose ring. You might see a little shine some people. I am in my pajamas today with not much done because this is my comfy, safe place. In my loose fitting, comfy pajamas. It's a ZZ Top shirt, even though I don't listen to ZZ Top, but I got it from a coworker, and I thought, why not have it as a pajama shirt? Uh, and my background is my bookshelf that is just loaded with tchotchkes, little collections, trinkets. I nest a lot, so I really love having all the little things that make me happy right around me, so I can look around and just gaze at it and just be happy for a minute, and then go back to my biz. So that's me.
Thank you, Kinzi. That's great. I'm going to set up a little bit of ground rules for everybody involved. Not that there's that many in yet. We still have about 7 maybe attendees. So we want this to be a safe space. So everyone on here needs to just kind of be respectful, courteous. Well, I don't know courteous, but respectful and civil. We're not going to get into big old arguments or anything like that
Just
here.
do your best.
This is more of a belonging kind of situation as opposed to a battle royale. But we welcome autistics and non-autistics, anybody who wants to be part of the conversation. So feel free to comment, ask questions, add your 2 cents to the conversation, anything you want in the comment section. I know that you can't speak aloud in our event besides Kinzi and myself, but I will be reading comments out loud for the ones that we are responding to so that we can keep everybody in the loop as well. So that'll be
yeah, I know sometimes with topics that can seem delicate and sensitive, that sometimes it's hard to get your question out in a way that you mean, but without sounding like you could be coming off as rude. As a person who can sometimes struggle with that and has to spend a long time sitting there in my head coming up with a tactful way of doing that, Sometimes if it's too much for me to handle that, I'll look at the person I'm with, hopefully they're safe, and I'll say, I know how this is going to come out. Take away all emotion and loaded language. I'm just going to say this. Please hear me as it is. So if you say, if you can't come up with something, I don't want you suffering over it. Say, you know, preface it by saying, please take emotion out of this and just read it as it is. I will absolutely do my best to understand that that's what you mean, because I too am not always going to be able to say what I want to or need to, and it's going to come out in a way that not everybody's going to pick up. So please be considerate with me. I will be considerate with you. We're all at different parts of our journey.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I want to read a couple comments here. So Kat Howell also said, yes, learning how to accommodate yourself is so hard, and neurotypical people can't help with this. And I want to lump that with Benjamin Moore's comment, advocating for oneself is an ongoing journey for us. So absolutely, advocating for yourself is super key as an autistic adult, because no one else is going to do it for you, and no one else should do it for you, because it's really you who knows what you need and what works best for you. It can be hard though, because especially as you're growing into your own understanding and your own where you're at in your disclosure journey as well, it can be going into new territory. Like, I knew I was autistic for several years before I got my formal diagnosis, and then it was a few more years before I even disclosed to work. And when I did, I actually had to ask for a close friend of mine to help me walk through what I probably needed for my accommodations. Now, she was neurotypical, but she knew me very well, so that was handy. So I could talk about what my experience was, and she could talk about, okay, well, you really need this, and I think that that is reasonable, and that's what we're going to do. And so fortunately, she was in the position where she could actually know what was acceptable to ask for, as well as what I really would benefit from and really needed. And so we walked through that together. So that was nice, because it's hard to even know what accommodations exist, let alone what would work for you and what you need, when you have been living without them for so long and not really been on that journey. So there's that as well.
That's so true. Right now, I have what originally started as an accommodation and has now kind of just grew into one of the policies that we have in our department, which I'm very thankful for, is like remote working. And so when I first started my current job, I had a different diagnosis. I mean, I still technically do have that diagnosis, but it was bipolar. I was fresh off of that boat. Like a couple weeks after I got that diagnosis, I started my new job. I started new medications, all of it. And I knew that one of the things that could really help me was being able to work from home a couple days a week, 2 days a week. It did start as an accommodation. I did have to go through our HR department. I did have, my doctor, my prescribing doctor, write a note. But so since then, like, I have 2 days a week. Since then, it's kind of just a rule of our department. You can work home from 2 days a week. So now nobody has to know. And it's not an official accommodation. I love it when those things are kind of just naturally fit in for anybody to take and like to have this if they need it. You don't have to be neurodiverse in order to just appreciate having some space from people or having a different area to focus. But for me, it's so important to be able to look forward to those days where I'm home, where I don't have to mask, where I don't have to socialize, where I can focus if I want to, where if I have a day where I wake up and I can't stop crying because I'm sensitive about something for some other reason, or I didn't get enough sleep, I get that day to myself and I love it. But not everybody, I don't know any other accommodation that I could be asking for. So like what you were saying is like, we don't even know what we could be doing. Like I am so curious what other accommodations exist because I know that there are areas that I'm having trouble, but I don't know what sort of solutions could be implemented, let alone reasonable solutions that could be implemented. Because that's it, is you have to be reasonable, right? Like, well, uh, that's a squishy word, right?
Well, the nice part about reasonable really just means that you're not making it impossible for them either financially or logistically.
Mm-hmm. But,
Like,
reasonable to somebody at work that, is, well, kind of a busybody and puts even though they're in a different department, they're not your friend, anything, they like have this weird magnifying glass over you where they're so
mhm.
interested in everything you're doing and why or how you get to do things differently or get away with things, things like those people that just like don't have anything better to do. Like, get out of
Oh
my
my goodness.
business.
Yep.
Like, let
Yep.
me, if I want to work home for 2 days a week, I'm allowed to. It's not up to you. It's not your concern. But you still socially and like as a coworker or acquaintance have to deal with that stigma, whether or not they know what's going on with you. They know you're getting special treatment. That's it. Like,
That's why it's really nice to have the whole department able to do that. Is it takes away that your special aspect.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And
It's like what, but yeah, it's like a neurotypical person should totally be allowed like an accommodation of this, even if there's nothing on paper saying that they need it, like that's it. It's like we all have our needs and wants. If we can keep working, why is it a bad thing?
yeah, and a lot of people who talk about accommodations for autistic or other neurodivergences have said that what works for us is going to work for everybody, and that's the same with other disabilities as well. Like there are a lot of innovations in the world that have come out of disability needs.
Mm-hmm.
Curb cuts being the easiest one to just lay out there. Curb cuts works for everyone, literally
Mm-hmm.
everyone,
Mm-hmm.
not just those who use wheelchairs, not just those who are pushing a stroller or anything like that. I've seen lists of all the people who would need it, but I would say everyone can benefit from it. Like, I don't want to trip
Yeah.
walking. I don't want to trip. I
Yeah.
trip a lot.
I do so much. I took a picture of my leg this morning because over the last week, I have had each day a new mysterious bruise forming. And this morning, I'm like, that's like 3 new bruises right next to the other ones. What am I doing? Like, I
That's
don't
my
need
whole
more
life.
obstacles.
That's my whole life. That's my whole life. I constantly. So I want to read some
Uh,
comments.
yes. Yeah. I just see they're stacking up
So
there.
let me go back. So I really like what Jamie said here. Getting diagnosed was like getting an answer, but 20 billion new questions. And I think that Kinzi is probably very comfortable talking about that right now because she is in the exact same place as you, Jamie, on this journey.
I feel
Yep,
that so hard.
Martin Griffin says, and we don't have to commute when we work from home, which is great
Yes.
for everybody, not just
Hmm.
people who need that, but I think that that is extremely helpful in our
Hmm.
energy in our energy use. Like I don't know why, but I'm not a fan of the spoon theory, even though I'm a fan of its concept. I
Yeah,
just
the
don't like to
concept I
use
like,
it.
but I'm still like my brain isn't like, okay, but spoons. And so I'm trying to come up with, yeah, other things that fit for me that make me feel like
Yeah,
that click of there we go.
exactly.
That
Yeah.
makes sense.
But like in the spoon theory, like
Mhm.
the commute takes up a lot of spoons.
It
Even if
does.
you're a good driver or you have good transportation or you don't have any disabilities that are related to it, I think even neurotypical, non disabled, completely standard, whatever, still use a lot of spoons for for the
Mhm.
commute, no matter how they get there. And so I think that remote, at least some of the time, if not all of the time, which is better in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, and I
Um,
didn't mention it. Part of that, like my original accommodation with the 2 days remote was part of it. My boss understood because I was commuting an hour. And so she's like, oh yeah, gas, time and stuff. So that was also very sweet. And for that commute, it was kind of a blessing and a curse depending on the day. I'm a person who one of my special interests is music. Like I really love to memorize lyrics. And so I could spend an hour on my commute singing to 20 songs, just full blast, processing my emotions as I can. And then I get home and I'm like, okay, cool, I had that. Or I get to work and I had that. But then some days it would like, I would spend the hour crying and just trying to process how I felt that way and dragging myself through. So it was like commuting was sometimes a nice thing, sometimes a not nice thing.
I love what you just said, but I do want to read what
Yes.
William Gilrath said. William says accessibility is not just for those with visible disabilities, but also invisible. I know I can be overstimulated, overloaded by bad color contrast, horrible fonts, slides with too much information, etc. Not cool, and everyone is like, deal with it.
Hmm.
I I'm gonna be real honest. I totally feel you on that, but I also feel like as a parent, I'm terrible about paying attention to when I need to not do this to my kids. So, like, when you're a parent, a lot of times you have to convince your kids not to overreact to certain things so that they don't constantly, for the rest of their life, have terror of like bugs that are not going to do anything to them, or have this overreaction to the smallest injuries, and not for our sakes, but for their sakes, so that they don't have to feel that anxiety when it's a lesser issue
Hmm.
than they thought it was when they first experienced it the first time. And while I totally respect that if it continues to be a thing, that's their situation, and I respect that. But as parents, it's a hard balance because you want to kind of raise them up so that they have like some perspective, so that they have some kind of understanding that yes, that may hurt, like a paper cut may hurt, but breaking your leg is a little bit more severe. And so they have that kind of concept, especially if
Hmm.
they're neurodivergent, because it takes more to develop the perspective there,
Hmm.
especially with our heightened sensitivity, because it's totally valid to have the heightened sensitivities, but we also have to kind of understand in our own minds, okay, so this sucks for me, but it could be worse. So let me figure out the best way to handle this. And it's not that I'm going to stuff it down and pretend that it doesn't bother me. It's that I'm
Hmm.
going to find what is healthiest for me to feel better
Hmm.
without me giving myself more stress.
Hmm. Like
It's
everybody
a hard
has a
balance.
different like appropriate level of reaction to what occurred, and it's hard. I can hear that. Like it's hard to teach what we think our appropriate reaction would be because we don't know where their levels are yet to know what is appropriate for them yet. But like
Yeah.
I guess like for me, like I've always been a toe stubber. I stub my toe, big toe, pinky toe, all my toes on everything all the time. When I was little, it's like, oh my God, that hurts so
Worst
bad.
thing ever.
And
Yep.
like now it's like, no, it still hurts so bad. But my response to it is not, it is now like, okay, I know what helps me feel better right here. Do some deep breathing. After a minute of deep breathing and processing the pain, it'll go away. And so now I know that that's my appropriate response. It still hurts the same as when it did when I was little, but but processing and coping with that pain in an appropriate way, considering, yeah, if I had fallen and snapped my leg, like my the bone in my leg, that would be appropriate response. I can scream now. I am okay if it like to scream at this because that's appropriate. But yeah, learning about it, like I had to do it over and over again. And unfortunately, a lot of external people shamed me into reeling in my reactions. I was the kid that always said owie. Something would bump me, owie. Something, something would pull my hair, owie. Like I had cousins who were like, we can't, like, we don't want you over here tonight with our kids because like we're so tired of hearing your voice, basically, and you're just constantly saying owie, owie, owie. And they told me this, like as a 7, 8 year old, they told me that. So then I internalized, you're going to be in pain all the time because that's normal. You're always in pain. But now you're not allowed to say that you're in pain. Now you're not allowed to process verbally, externally, that you're in pain. So now I have that deep breathe. Don't let it out. Don't let anybody know that you just hurt the shit out of yourself.
Right. Yeah. I think it's hard as the parent, even though I am autistic and I understand these things. I think
Mhm.
in the moment, especially if you're frustrated or if you're tired of hearing it. I mean, as
Mm,
a parent, you do get tired of
yeah.
hearing things.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
do, especially if you're autistic and you have heightened senses yourself, because you're tired of the whining because it is really getting on your nerves. And that happens to all
Mhm.
parents, but if you have the
Yeah.
heightened senses, it happens faster. And
Yes.
so, I feel that it is a challenge, and I feel guilty when I do it wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
but
we
at
all
the
have slip
same
ups.
but at the same time, I feel like, okay, so I'm a human and I need to respect my own um what's true to me as well as what's true to
Hmm.
them. So I try to work on a balance with that. It's hard at different ages.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's rough at the age that you were told that, but at the same time I feel like I've done that too.
Right. Well,
So
because that's it.
I'm just as guilty.
There's such a huge part, like, and I'm trying really hard to internalize this, with my relationships right now, especially with my husband. I'm coming on real hard and a lot right now because of me going through this whole process. But the thing is like, that's one of my needs, is I need somebody to listen to me, but also like I'm not the only one with needs. Like, yeah, this might be happening to me, but like how special does that make me in the comparison to this relationship that I'm in, where this person also has needs? And so like I can't say my needs are more important. I can't say that. So like I might be going through something and I can say this is what I need, but also like I have to like take space, make space. I have to take my space for my needs, but I also have to make space for his needs. And if his needs right now is to have space and to have that quiet, I have to give that to him, because that's how can I expect him to do my needs when I'm sitting there like, crumbling? I'm not, in this relationship, I'm not special. I'm still 50%. He is the other 50%. So it's hard. It's so hard. But that means that I now have to push myself into finding new coping mechanisms or new supports when those moments hit where he can't fulfill my needs because I'm fulfilling his, right?
Yes. Oh my. Okay, so now we are getting a lot more comments, and I'm not going to be able to read them
Yeah.
all because we're already halfway through. And I found this last time I tried to do them all, and we ran out of time. We
Yeah.
actually
Well, and
ran
these
over
a
time.
lot of this is about kind of like our I think a lot of people resonated with it when it came to the accommodations and working in those dynamics. So I think that's what those comments are really reflecting, is that
Yeah.
that hit some people.
Yes. So I'm trying to catch up on that. Um, I agree with a lot of what Carrie is saying, and I also disagree with some. And I know this because I worked with her. Um, so there's that. But not that I didn't work well with her, just that we had different ways that we liked. Just like
Mhm.
you were just saying, everybody has to kind of balance that. And so,
Mhm.
and I'm much more of a asynchronous worker, and that's not Carrie's style. And I completely respect that because we're not the same person. Um,
I
but yeah,
can read that comment and I can see exactly where she's coming from because like I'm coming from an AuDHD perspective where my ADHD and my autism are constantly like
and
pulling back and forth.
that's
So
Carrie
that's
also.
yeah,
Mhm.
and so I feel that hard because that's why I really love having my split remote schedule and split office schedule is because in the office I can be more regimented, I can be more regulated. There's a certain system, and then at home I can have that freedom and flexibility. So I have to have both in my schedule in order to fulfill both sides of me. So I feel that.
Yes, consistency can also be an issue. That's right,
Hmm.
Carrie. Some people do need to have that regular schedule and a regular consistency and everything exactly the same. So setting up your home set up the same as your work setup can be very helpful in that. That's a good point.
Hmm.
Um, I I do things a little bit differently myself, but everybody's different. I find and I'll say this to you, Kinzi, anyways, your ODHD or however you want to pronounce that.
Oh yeah, I guess I wasn't sure. That was
I'm not
completely
good at
I
pronouncing.
never heard anybody say it aloud, so this was totally me just like, oh, this is how it's said.
I like it. I think that's good. Um, so I struggle harder with communication with ADHD and the other person being involved because I don't have it, and it actually my processing is slower. My language processing is slower, and
Mm,
I have found a lot of ADHD people who are either ADHD or ODHD um, speak faster than I can process, and so that's something that is not their fault. It's not my fault. It's just a barrier that I find I struggle with personally. And
mhm.
I love my friends and family and everybody who have all kinds of different neurotypes. And so I try really hard, but sometimes I get really confused
Yeah.
because I can't keep up.
I feel that I as a fast talker, I get that. If I know my train of thought, I'll get it out as fast as I can. I've been called out on that since I was little. People are like, I don't know what you just said. That was too fast. And on the other side of it, like, well, sorry, still on that side of it, I can speak really fast, but I get really impatient with people who speak really slow because I'm trying so hard to fill in the blanks of their sentence or help them out or something because if it's too slow, my brain just can't compute. But then on the other side of it now, when I'm trying really hard to come up with my thought and I'm having a really hard time coming up with my thought, I'm very slow at processing it. And sometimes when some people are talking about complex things that I'm trying to track and puzzle piece in my head together to find why it makes sense, then I need that slow processing. So I feel both sides of it pretty immensely. Um, and I'm impatient with my ADHD side. And I tell when I find myself being impatient listening to somebody else who's speaking slowly, I catch myself. I'm like, this is your ADHD. Give them the opportunity to get out what they want. They're human. You have this issue too. So I try really hard to like really emphasize the empathy because I know what it feels like. And that's what I can maybe use to combat some of those anxieties of time going fast or slow.
So Carrie asks, "Are you? Is she the other
I see
person?"
that. Yeah.
Um, both you and my daughter also, and I've met some others as well at other workplaces and stuff. So it's not any one individual person. I
Mhm.
have struggled multiple times in my life, so that's how I know that that's what's going on. Is it's not a one person thing. except that I'm the same person in all, but in all of those situations. But that's more of a my processing thing than anything else, because I just want all the information. And so if I can't get it all, if I can't keep up, it's hard for me to catch up, which is also hard trying to manage these comments. Yes, Jamie, these are things I wonder about because I don't have ADHD. But my daughter does, and so she's ADHD and autistic, and so I try to figure things out as we go. But I do wonder about those things. I'm learning. So Jamie says I'm learning things I thought helped with my ADHD didn't work, but it was because being autistic was almost counteracting it.
It's true. I
Okay,
feel
so
it.
I don't know a
I
lot
feel it.
about that.
Yeah. Okay, so for some background for folks on mine and Grace's origins, like how we met and stuff, we worked together, and around the time that we worked together, like she was going through getting her daughter diagnosed for ADHD, and I was recently diagnosed at that time for ADHD. So Grace felt very safe talking to me. I mean, number one, we had a good communication style that we'll get into later, I'm sure, but not everybody in the office appreciated overhearing. We were good with it though, so we were good. But she felt safe coming to me to talk to me about ADHD, because she was trying to figure it out, to be able to help her daughter. And then in that process, Grace was like, maybe you should consider getting assessed for autism. And I went, I'm still figuring out ADHD. So like, but now after years of understanding the ADHD, well, to a minimal extent, and then now understanding it even more as well as the autism, I can see it so blatantly fighting each other. And why at first looking into autism, I was like, oh, I can't be because these things aren't happening the way it usually happens. And then I started finding people specifically who had both, and they would show me kind of in these comparison lists, like, and I felt it. And like, I love structure. I love planning. I love scheduling, but also my ADHD is like, we cannot do this every day. Let's go and do something super weird and random we've never thought of, and let's do it right now. So like, that's not always something an autistic person can really manage to get themselves to be excited and go do. But like, it's something that, like, if I don't fulfill that side of my ADHD, then you get me yesterday where I was kind of a crumbly mess because I wanted to do something so bad that was out of the normal that I hadn't thought of, and I had nobody to go do it with, and I couldn't think of what to do. And so then I kind of cried and I just sat alone. And then we went to a circus. So that really helped. But it's like, okay, which situation and how and to what extent, percentage wise, is my ADHD kicking in versus my autism? And then suddenly those percentages 60-40 flip flop because an emotion was discovered that changed everything, and now I have to process that. Like, it's like a mess. I feel like I don't know who I'm going to wake up as, and I've explained to doctors the reason I'm diagnosed bipolar is because I'm like, yeah, like I have sometimes these crazy periods of time where I'm like, go go go, and then like, oh, super depressed, I don't know what to do with myself. So they were like, oh, this is what you are. And I'm like, oh, but now I'm realizing special interest, excitement, ADHD, and then like autism, that I have that, like, those specific structured needs that aren't being met. And those like overwhelm me, and I dive and I cry and I can't move, and my brain's a mess.
Oh, let's talk about misdiagnosis a little bit, because I've had that experience as well, being misdiagnosed a long time ago. So, and a lot of people do, who are autistic, because there's so many different ways to be autistic. and to
Mm,
experience it. And because research is so far behind, there's a lot of professionals who don't have a clue. They should
yes.
have a clue. They should be required to have a clue, but they don't. And so
Well,
when I
because
was
the
in college,
requirements are pretty low.
yeah, they're pretty rigid. They say
Yeah.
we're rigid, they're rigid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so a couple of things. One is misdiagnosis. I want to, for a second, because I thought of something while you were talking that had to do with you were talking, and I forgot it until now. Is that they say we're rude, but neurotypicals tell us things about ourselves that is so rude. Like you were saying, they flat out told you when you were 8 years old that you are basically should not say things or
Yeah.
do
Well,
things.
my stepmother, who is the reason I have CTPSD, which is also another layer that I have to rip apart from autism and ADHD. I would go to her and I would say something was hurting. And we were poor. We didn't have a lot of money. I'm sure we didn't have insurance, but like when your kid comes to you saying like this is hurting really bad, you'd be like, "Oh my gosh, like let's figure this out. Let's get it looked at. What something." No, my stepmom looked at me and is like, "Oh, well, aren't you an 80-year-old at 8?" So now I internalized that. Yeah.
Yeah. I yeah, so I think that non-autistics can be just as rude. I'm not saying all non-autistic. So anyone out there who's non-autistic, I'm not saying you're rude. I'm saying that we're not necessarily inherently rude, just like you guys are not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily inherently not rude. And especially crisscrossing, it definitely
Yeah.
goes into the double empathy theory, but I'm not gonna go on that because I could talk about that for an eternity and then we'll be running out of time. In fact, we're coming close. So
Yeah.
I do want to talk about misdiagnoses. So when I was in college, I was going through PTSD from an event and not
Mhm.
CPTSD, which is
Yeah.
separate.
For
Um,
those of you that aren't sure what we're talking about, there's it's overall in the DSM-5, it's PTSD. But there's kind of an understanding that there's two different ways. There's like the event, the single event type thing that really controls you. And then there's CPTSD, which is complex PTSD. And that's from a series or a long duration of something happening. So usually, yeah, child abuse, neglect, things like that over a long duration of period. There's more symptoms to it, but it's not considered its own thing in the DSM-5. That's because that thing is not caught up to where we are in society. But anyways, that's just a little bit brief background for those of you who are kind of dwelling on, I don't know what they're talking about. Anyways, proceed, Grace. Sorry.
Perfect. Thank you. Because sometimes I forget to do that. So I was going through PTSD from an event, but I had disassociated from it. So I had shoved it so far down that I was not making myself aware of it on a conscious level.
Mhm.
So I was going through so much that I ended up going to like the school counselor therapist, but they were like actually psychotherapists. But she was so terrible, and she was the reason why I didn't go to another therapist for a really 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 long time. The problem
Mhm.
is that I went in not knowing what was going on with me. To be honest with you, I had no clue what was going on with me. I had some
As
health issues going on,
That's
so I was
super
confused with
normal
that.
for people to go in and be like, I don't know, please help me get answers. That's so normal.
Yeah, so I go in. I have PTSD that I don't know about. I am autistic and don't know about it. I'm going through health issues which I do know about, but I don't think that they're part of it. And I go in, and she instantly, within the first 30 minutes of meeting me, tells me that she thinks that I am manic depressive, heavy on the manic side. And I'm saying to myself, I don't ever feel manic. I always feel depressed. I don't understand why you're saying this. And so I argued with her about it. So she gave me a take home test to fill out. I take the take home test, bring it back to her. Long story short, because she didn't show up for a lot of appointments and I had to leave the test with her. she ended up telling me that I'm right. I'm not manic at all.
Oh,
At all.
that's crazy. You knew that.
But we still went into the whole like depressive, which I had depression, but like it was a symptom of something else.
Mm-hmm.
We never, I didn't even trust her, so we stopped. So we never
Yeah.
got to what was really going on. And I guarantee we would have never gotten to an autism diagnosis with
Mm-hmm.
her. And that was quite a few years ago, so it would have even been harder for anyone to really diagnose me at that point, just
Mm-hmm.
because of the understanding back then. But Kinzi, you had a similar misdiagnosis, and so when you told me about it, I was like, mm, mm,
I know,
mm,
right? Yeah.
mm,
Well,
mm.
so
Not
I
not
come
only
from a
because of me.
place, yeah, like I come from, it's like I didn't go to medical school. This isn't, my jam. So I am a person who just like I go into the appointment believing that this person is going to like understand, talk to me, explain things to me, like, create the connecting points in my head. Oh, gotcha. I see now. And I guess that's just too much faith to go into a medical provider with, because I think that mindset is what set me in a direction of basically just like letting other people pass me from one person to the other and me never having control. It started, I went into a primary care provider's office for a 15-20 minute appointment. I don't even think I had ever seen her before. I think she was new. Like I already said, I have my PTSD, I have my trauma. And she asked me a question, and I'm very, matter of fact about my past. But the thing is my body is not, because, well, it's still processing. So while I'm sitting there answering this question, like speaking as if I am right now, I also have the accompanied like waterworks of just water pouring, like tears pouring down my face. And she stops me and she goes, "Have you ever considered bipolar?" And I'm like, "Well, no, because like I had just lived with my best friend for 3 years who was bipolar, and I took care of her. Like there was nothing I could see that would be similar. But I also am a person that's like, but it's not always, you're not going to fit into a mold, so I don't have to be like her in order to maybe still have this." So I give that benefit of the doubt because this person is a freaking doctor. She refers me to a clinic. I go in, I meet a woman. I have a hour and a half, 2 hour appointment, which you do have to keep in mind. Okay, so there's like the beginning of the appointment where you're talking a little bit, and the end of the appointment where you're like kind of going over some things. So basically an hour and a half. I walked out with 3 diagnoses. Um, during which she was asking me questions that I could not answer. So red flag number one, I couldn't process the question in order to answer it accurately, because these questions were not asked in a way that I could properly like think and answer. Um, but when I was struggling answering these, she would go, "We don't have much time. We have to get through 2 more assessments," or something. Like she would verbally rush me through my answers. She would barely look at me because she was constantly like typing on her computer. Like I was visually struggling during this whole thing. By the end of it, she told me that I was bipolar 2, PTSD, and ADHD. I do not like think anything bad. The ADHD was already something I had gone to another primary and had been dealing with. So I knew that was right. PTSD, of course, if you knew anything about my life, yes, that was right. The bipolar, I was like, I just like, part of me was on the edge. I'm like, okay, like I'm happy that I have an answer. And, there was a couple things, because naturally between autism and bipolar, there are a few things that look similar. They're not the same, but they look from a surface level similar. And but I never felt like secure in it. I just went, okay, I guess they're right. And so 2 years. Oh, I never saw that doctor again, by the way. She immediately left that clinic and I never saw her again. She passed my piece of paper on to a male provider, who I was then seeing for 2 years. on medication, changing my not my diagnosis, changing my medications around. I was at a new job. I was going from working remote 40 hours a week to then in the office for 40 hours a week commuting. Like my life was in this huge upheaval of everything changing. And over that next 2 years, my mental state got worse when it came to how I handled situations, how my relationship coped with this diagnosis. My husband was like, I don't know when I can talk to you or when you're freaking out and if it's this and if it's real or if you feel like you actually have a point. Like he started trusting me less because he couldn't trust my emotions and I couldn't trust my emotions because I felt explosive all the time. During this process now, in the last few months, I haven't been on that medication and having autism as like my answer, everything in my life has changed. Everything. My anxiety levels have plummeted. Like I'm not even taking my anxiety medication anymore. And I have almost no anxiety because that spiral of I'm doing something and I'm reacting to something, but I don't even know what I'm reacting to or why. And now I'm making everybody's life worse and I can't control myself. And my husband's looking at me like I'm crazy and all this stuff that would like, build and build and build and compound and make everything worse. That entire process is gone now because I start feeling that emotion in me and I go, what just happened? What changed? Oh, I see the change. I see the disruption. I see the sensory issue. I see the trigger and I'm not ashamed of it anymore because I can see it and I know in it I have an answer. So I can go, okay, what do I need to do right now? Yesterday, I was so proud. I was having a moment. My cat spilled my plant, my indoor plant. Dirt went everywhere. The plant went everywhere. He's done this before. And I immediately was triggered. Like, I can't handle this. My husband was watching a TV show at the time, and I was really mad because he had kept watching it without me, and I wasn't sure what was happening anymore. And I was just sitting there on the floor, cleaning up dirt, listening to conversations I couldn't follow because I didn't know. And I was so annoyed. And I just like stop and I look at the floor and I go, can you please turn off the TV? And he's like, yeah, why? Are you okay? And I'm like, okay, I need to tell him what's going on so that way he's not mad at me, but I don't want to be mad at him. Okay, I'm really annoyed right now. This plant triggered me and I'm realizing that I don't know what's happening on the TV and I can't sit here listening to it. And he goes, okay. And he turns it off and we sit in silence for a little bit. He helps me clean up the mess and we're good. And I go outside and I clean and I decompress myself. I put myself in a different situation. I made myself communicate and it felt so good. I was able to, take these 8-hour fights that we could potentially have because of a triggered situation that I couldn't see or identify. And I had a 2-minute conversation where I was able to tell him how I felt and what I needed. And he completely listened and he helped. And it was like, it's so nice. It feels so good. So I just want to say for people who think that they are not what they are diagnosed, please keep looking into it, please, because it can change your freaking life. It can change your life. It can change your relationships. It can change everything. So like, do not lose that determination, please.
Yes. Yes. I was reading the comments and I'm not going to read them out loud because we're getting really close to the end, but I'm going to kind of give my feedback on that combined with yours. So here's the thing I want to say about misdiagnoses that I was thinking just now based on the comments and you, and something that else I had thought of myself as well, is that a little bit ago, before this call, I was thinking to myself, misdiagnoses probably happen because of confirmation bias, because they only give us the tests that are for what they think we have. They don't give us the test for everything and let's narrow it down. They give us for what they think we have or what we ask to be tested for. Those are the only two.
Yeah, they asked me like, do you think that you've had any manic periods of time or anything like that, like things where you've been out of the normal? And it's like at that point, like I had just come off of like a year where I had broken up with my ex of 6 years, where I had completely given up and sacrificed everything about myself. And so in this year where I was single, I invested myself in every special interest I ever thought I could ever want to do, but put aside. So yeah, it looked like I was manic as fuck.
and honestly, ADHD can add to that as well. But
Yep.
but yeah, I think that the confirmation bias plays a huge role because of the way that the tests are set up is so that it's specific to what you're testing. And so they don't give us
Mhm.
like a across the board, let's test everything. They give us
Yeah.
a, this is what I think we should test for, and we're going to test for it and see if it's true. And so it gives
Yeah.
them a confirmation bias even before they um, give it to us, you
Hmm.
know. And then the other thing I was thinking as we are going through all of this, the comments and what you were saying, is I think alexithymia puts us at a huge disadvantage when we're going into therapy, because I would bet that people who don't have alexithymia, now alexithymia, for those who don't know what it is difficulty with understanding and communicating emotions.
Hmm.
That's not a full explanation, but it'll give you an idea of what we're talking
It's a
about.
gist. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have alexithymia and you go into therapy, not knowing what's going on with you and not being able to tell them what's going on with you can't communicate everything you're feeling or thinking,
And
and
then they rush you.
you don't know what you're thinking or feeling.
Yeah.
So they're making assumptions. You're assuming that they would know more than you because you have no idea. You can't
Hmm.
even fathom what's going on, and so you're trusting the professional, and
Hmm.
they may be well intentioned and trying their best. But if
Yeah.
you have alexithymia and they don't have the proper specialty
Hmm.
or enough information from you, they can't assess it. And so it takes longer to figure all that out.
Yeah.
And
Which is why I thought
and
it was super like just uh irresponsible, I think, for the way that that meeting was conducted, because that's it, is like, as the medical professional, that there is more to a lot of this.
yep,
So I think that's it, is like, I shouldn't be the one telling you how inappropriate that was. Like,
I think it's very telling that she was no longer there immediately after.
well, and as far as I know, like, she left, but I don't know, I don't know. But even then,
Um,
looking up that clinic, like, I'm still kind of at that clinic. I'm switching providers because that male provider is not good. But there is, like you said, if you don't have the specialty, and I scoured their website, everything, there's not a single mention of autism anywhere.
yep,
And so that's it, is like, if they don't even
they
know,
don't have the.
they don't
Mm-mm.
have it. They don't know what they're looking for. They don't have the tests for it. They don't have the people. And
Which is
but
why
the problem is like, if you know that you don't have that in your clinic, then you should know that you're biased against it automatically, right? Like, you can't look at the numbers, like, I don't, there's different numbers, but between 40 and 60% of females are misdiagnosed with bipolar when it's really autism. You cannot throw that diagnosis around without understanding that you have a 40 to 60% chance that you are incorrect, or there's more going on. You know,
yeah,
it doesn't make
and
sense.
so it's. I had one thought. Hold on, I lost the thought. It
Yeah,
ran
sorry.
away. It ran away. I hate that. It's it gets lost in there. Um, it's so true what you're saying, and I think that. Oh, I know what it was. I know what it was. Here I go. So I wanted to be as um respectful of your diagnoses when you told me about them, without
Mhm.
without invalidating it if that's what you were actually experiencing, because I'm not you. I can't
Right.
decide for you who you are or what's going on with you.
Mhm.
But at the time I was like, oh no, that is a misdiagnosis, I can tell.
Right.
Now when you told me you were ADHD, I was like, yep, yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anybody who meets me can
no,
see that. Yeah.
yeah. And you told me that when we were like early on, like knowing each other. So like I was like, yep, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that makes sense. Um, but I didn't tell you that I thought you were autistic until later. Um, and I think that sometimes I can question it in my own mind whether someone I think is autistic if they are also ADHD, because there are some crossover things that
There's, yeah.
I don't know where that line goes. So I didn't tell you, but then when you told me about your diagnoses, I was like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because not only do I know that I had a misdiagnosis, but I know from many other people online that it is very common
So
for
common.
especially non-male um, people to be misdiagnosed with specifically bipolar, or it used to be called manic depressive,
BPD.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and some similar other ones. And so I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about them misdiagnosing you,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that it is a misdiagnosis. So I asked you, I was like,
Yeah.
do you feel like it's an accurate diagnosis for you? Because if it is, that's
Mm-hmm.
valid. There's nothing wrong with it. I want you to feel completely validated by whatever you're experiencing, but I also want to kind of point you in the right direction if it doesn't
Yeah.
feel right. And especially since a lot of times therapists will medicate you for certain
Oh my gosh.
diagnoses, and then you're like, and then that really just messes with you. It just
You're even
harms you.
farther away from your natural state in order to then be able to functionally answer those questions the way you want to, or the way you
Exactly.
need to, or the way you really feel. Yeah, like I'm trying to now
And it
like
messes
rip
with your life.
apart the last 2 years because I was medicated and diagnosed, and I'm trying to sort through like how that impacted me and what changed. And like it's so hard ripping that apart from who I am and how I've been, because for 2 years that's who I am and how I've been.
Yeah.
But I
And
remember, whenever people would ask me, like, how do you feel about this diagnosis? Do you feel like it's accurate? I remember hemming and hawing about it, like, like I kind of feel like it makes some sense. And I also kind of don't. And it's because it
right.
made sense in the ways that those overlapping similarities, but there was so much that I was like, but also it doesn't click. It doesn't make sense because of all these other things. And so when my doctors were failing me a few months ago, I was like, all right, finally, I don't trust them enough to tell me what I need to know. They were giving me medications shouldn't have been together. They weren't telling me. They were talking to me like I went to medical school with them. So I started doing my own research on bipolar. My husband, I had him do it. And he even looks at me and says, no, I don't think this is you. And I go, no, I don't think this is me. And I even jumped to like, maybe it was cyclothymia, which is kind of like um, the light version of bipolar. So instead of like months or weeks in certain phases and stuff, it's like a couple days or a couple hours or something, and it's lesser. So I was like, maybe that. No, still not. And even then I brought it to my doctor and he wouldn't look at that. He's like, no, there's so much that we would have to go through in order to look and change your diagnosis. And I went, then you are not the person for me. Like, so, but once we looked into autism, I mean, I cried. I cried so hard because everything I was finding, I mean, not everything, because naturally I don't have all the traits, but I mean, I felt like I was me. My husband looked into it, and him being, a contrarian as he is, he looked at it and he goes, no, this is you. I have total faith you're going to get this diagnosis because this matches. Oh, I think you're muted.
I was muting so that I wouldn't
But
interrupt
yeah,
you.
we're at
Uh,
11:04.
we are over now, and I don't mind, but I think that a lot of people are going to go.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to do a wrap up right now for anyone who's still on, just so that we don't leave anybody without closure.
We like that.
But we like that. So I want to say thank you to everyone for coming. And these were some great comments, and I wish I had gotten to every last one of them because there was some amazing stuff in the comments. So I hope nobody missed anything by
Hmm.
not having it read out loud. I feel so guilty for that, but it was such a great conversation, and it was flowing real fast, and it seemed like everybody was responding to each other. So I think most people got what they needed out of the comment section as well. Um, I just adore this community. And so I want to say thank you to everyone who came. I don't care whether there were 2 people or 100. I think that this community is super great. And I love everything you have to share. And I love learning from you guys, because I will always still be learning from you guys. Because just like the saying goes, if you met one autistic, you've met one autistic, because none of us are exactly the same. And I think that it's awesome that we have this love of learning, because we can learn from each other constantly for the rest of our lives, and I
Mm-hmm.
love that. I love that. And so thank you everyone for coming. And Kinzi, if you have any final thoughts.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited about this journey. I'm so excited to, when it was really clicking, I was crying because I was like, I finally understand myself. I finally feel like I can see inside my brain. It's not only that the window shattered and I can see on the other side. It was a distorted window and I couldn't see through the other side at all. And now I can finally see what my brain looks like. Regardless of if the world does, I feel better being in my body. So if you are questioning, if you are on this journey, if you are figuring it out and like you're not getting that answer, you're not getting that click, keep going, because you're what you got. And these doctors, as much as some of them that can be really helpful, sometimes you got to figure it out on your own and help guide them. So I I'm so excited that Grace gave me this opportunity. I'm so happy. Thank you for letting me do this.
Oh, we're definitely going to do this again.
There's so much to process, like
Yes. For those who are still sticking around, and I'm not shoving it off just yet, I wanted to comment on something, but I wanted to get that goodbye in there for those who do need to leave. So if you need to leave, feel free.
yeah.
But there was someone
Thank you.
in here who I think their comment was super relevant to your experience at our old workplace. And I don't want to call anybody out or anything like that, and we're not going to get too deep into it, but they were saying that they got told that they're as direct as a missile. I
Yeah.
remember my conversation with you where that came up, and I don't want to get into the details just because I don't want to like make it about the other people. I want to make it
Mhm.
about our conversation about us.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
after you expressed to me that some other people were perceiving the way you talked to me as
Yeah, because
rude.
I was being disciplined over it. Like I
Yeah.
was being disciplined because of the way that somebody overheard the way that we were talking.
Right. And somehow they weren't doing that to me, which is funny because I'm a very direct person myself. And I can never tell when I am doing it wrong, ever.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm surprised that they were only, anyways, it's not about
Mhm.
them. It's not
Yeah,
about
yeah,
them. It's
yeah.
about us. So when we were in that conversation and we were telling each other that, no, I like direct communication. Please be direct with me. I don't want indirect
Mm.
communication because I can't understand it.
Yeah.
It was then that I started going, she's autistic too.
Well,
But I told you about me and I didn't tell you about you because we were still getting to know each other.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, you know what, we're in a safe space here, and you were coming to me with this problem, and I feel like it's the best time to come out to you with my disclosure. I'm autistic, and I like it to be.
Mhm.
I want direct. I want to understand it clearly, and
Mhm.
that's not just me being autistic, but it's also my processing. So like
Mhm.
the less I have to try to infer, the better,
Interpretation is rough.
because my language translation is also very difficult for me. So if I have to do both, and I'm
Mhm.
not saying I speak another language besides English, I'm saying that like my thoughts are not language. And
Mhm.
so when I have to translate my thoughts to language and language back to my thoughts so that I understand, adding that added layer of inferring is insanely hard for me. And
It's
so
exhausting.
I need that directness. I am
Mhm.
gonna wrap this up.
Mhm.
Um, we still have 6 people on, or at least
Aw.
it says we do. I
Right.
think that might be also on a delay. But I really appreciate all of you coming, and I want to say thank you to
Mhm.
all of you. And I want you all to have a wonderful Sunday or whatever day it is where you are, because it might. No, 9 hours is still today. But wherever you are, have a good day, and I hope we do this again, and I hope you can all join us again. This is super great. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to
Thank
end
you
the
so
live,
much.
and Kinzi and I are going to stay on here for a little bit.